For tonight, my final question for you is if there was one or two bits of advice that you would want to impart to every author who's watching or listening to us right now, that they would take to heart and might make a significant difference in their career and their odds of landing a great agent like you or an agency like Root Literary, what would you tell them?
This is such a hard question. I feel like lately I've been thinking a lot about like where to put our focus and I guess I would say timing is so out of our control. Like I wish that I had landed a job at an agency like years before I did. I wish I would have started agenting like years before I did. Um and you just never know when like the stars are going to align, and when that opportunity is going to be presented to yourself. And so I try to like be kind and focus less, like kind to yourself and focus less on like, the timing of it all. I hear so often from authors who have been like querying for years. I signed someone, I think last year, who had been querying for like 8 years before I signed him. Um, and, I've known through, just from experience and from anecdotes from colleagues and stuff, I've heard of, so many authors who, agents signed them for a book that they love so much. And it just, for whatever reason, like timing, market, whatever, it didn't sell. Right. And it's always like, it hurts your heart a little bit to have to like, shelve that project and start on the new one. But I always feel like just moving forward and like starting that next project, like looking for that next opportunity so often like is the right answer. And not dwelling on like how much you love that book that like no one signed you for, or how much you love that book that someone didn't buy, and then just kind of like holding on to it and being unwilling to like let it go. Because I think so often when I've heard those stories, when you let it go and you kind of allow yourself to move on and to work on that next thing that you're really excited about, that often is what unlocks like, gets you that agent, gets you that book deal. And so I guess that, like, to sum that up, it's more like focus on the stuff that is within your control and try not to beat yourself up about like, I've been querying for X years and it hasn't happened yet, or I've been, my agent has submitted like, this book for me and it didn't sell yet. Because like, I really believe that like the stars will align and like all the work that you've put in will lead to something. Like what it will lead to, I can't say, of course, but like, I mean, speaking as someone who spent like 10 years, like, working random jobs that had nothing to do with publishing, like, getting my English degree in undergrad, like going to graduate school, learning like how this industry works, like, working in editorial, being a freelance editor, and having to like do all of that before I arrived at this place that feels, now that I'm here, like where I was always like meant to be. Like I couldn't have made it happen any faster than it did. You know what I mean? And I think to some extent, all of those skills that I developed at all those other places are like what helped me do a good job now. So I try to like look at it more like that, and remind myself that like the journey is like part of the process. You know what I mean? And then the other thing I would say, oh well, and for authors, I mean, obviously that involves like focusing on your craft, like things like that, because you can't like control when an agent's going to sign you or when you're going to sell that book, but you can get better with every book that you write, right? And like put that work in, to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and getting, giving yourself your best shot. And then the other thing I'll say that's kind of like um, a part two to that question is like finding your people. Um, because I feel like this job is so hard, whether you're an agent, whether you're an author, whether you're an editor. And I think like finding your support system is something that it's really important, finding those writer friends that you can share the highs and the lows with. Honestly, even something like not professional related, but like taking care of your mental health, right? Like maybe going to see a therapist and making sure that you're like really taking care of yourself and that like emotionally you're in a good place, because all of these things are going to make like dealing with the rest of it so much easier, to like have that support system. And I think that's why I love being at Root Literary, to be honest, is because like I do feel like I have that support system. I mean, Holly's obviously like a fantastic boss and has been mentoring me. I would say I work the closest with Taylor Haggerty, actually, and she's definitely like a person that I would consider to be my mentor. And I just think this job would be like a whole lot less fun and more challenging and like harder on the heart, like without Taylor. We talk all the time, like every day. Like, when we worked in the office, we used to work like 5 feet away from each other. And like for me, like that's my support system. And like having these people that like know me and believe in me, like outside of the external optics and like metrics of success. You know what I mean? Like Taylor believes in me, whether I get that client I wanted to get or not, whether I sell that book I wanted to sell or not. Right. And just like having that support system. So I guess like, focus on the things that are within your control and like find your support system. It would be my two things. Cause I just think both of those things and like those mindsets just make like everything else so much easier. So